Sorry, I'm a little late ahead. We've been jockeying for space. Different people needed the Zoom room.
The in-home office dilemma.
That's it. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here. Are we waiting for anybody else, Sophie? If we're not. Nope. Okay. I will open the council budget workshop for Monday, June 8th. Roll call show. All councilors are present. And we're moving on to the FY21 municipal budget discussion. Let Sophie take this off.
That was fast. I wasn't expecting it to be that fast. I'm going to share a screen. Okay, I'm not going to share a screen. We're going to try this again. Talk amongst yourselves. There it is. So here we are today to talk about the proposed FY21 capital investments, but also the 5-year capital improvement plan. Councilors should have all received documents supporting this in the budget notebook. There have been some changes as we've gone along. And so if something is different, please feel free to interrupt me just to make sure we're all on the same page, okay? So first, I want to just clarify for folks the difference between a capital investment and our operations budget. Our capital budget funds items that are $5,000 or greater that are expected to last 5,000 years, 5 years or more. Only 5 years. The different types
would only last 5,000 years.
Yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it? The types of capital investments that we talk about are divided into 4 purchasing categories and then a reserve category. So they're either infrastructure, equipment, or facilities, or there's also reserve spending, reserve for spending in future years. So the FY21 capital investment plan, our proposed capital investments for the coming year, total $972,180. This does represent the change in the North Main Avenue project that we have previously talked about. $650,680 are funded through general fund taxes, with the rest, about $351,500, funded through non-tax revenue. That non-tax revenue is usually reserve funds, so money that we have put away in a previous year to be used, or it could be tax increment financing dollars, so program development funds. Grants would be another non-tax revenue, or loan proceeds. We don't have any loan proceeds this year, but that does come into play in future years. So my plan as I go through this is to quickly review, have counselors stop me, and every department head should be on this meeting. So if we have a question, if they're not a panelist, Bell should be able to raise them up to answer whatever questions we have. So for FY21, we are proposing to spend $285,680. $8,000 of that is for fire hose. That is the hose on the trucks and that the firefighters use when they respond to calls. The $9,000 for SCBA air bottles, we're proposing that $9,000 come through Hazmat Reserve. This is a multi-year project. Instead of a huge bill that we have to fund through loan like we did last time, our plan is to break the bottle purchases up so that we're slowly replacing them over time. And the first piece of that, we are proposing that we pay through Hazmat Reserve. $52,200 for a police cruiser. Council will recall this is one. We were scheduled to have two this year. We were scheduled to have two last year, and we thought we'd only get one. And then we blew a motor in one of the cruisers, and we ended up ordering this cruiser early. We had ordered two. Josh went back and pulled one back. So this is only one cruiser this year.
Sophie,
Yep.
is that with all of the equipment that needs to go
Yep.
in it as well?
Yep. That is an all-in price. Police technology. The police department runs with its own server. It has to for compliance with information to protect the information that they have. That server and all the computers are slated to be replaced this year. The taser, every so often, we have to replace a taser. Josh can speak to how long in just a minute. But this plan is actually to lease, to purchase the tasers through a longer term plan with taser so that we are not having that huge upfront cost in 1 year. And we have $185,000 for the.
Sophie,
Yeah.
can we go back to the taser and
Sure.
I'd like to have a discussion. Doesn't have to be long or short,
Sure.
but with Josh. And when we set out on our budget, we hadn't had this police George Floyd killing protests.
Sure.
I'm interested now in when we use tasers, how, and Josh, respectfully, because I really want your opinion on this, and I've been thinking about it. When we use tasers, we've seen all of the videos of people getting tased and how atrocious that is. And how important is it for the town of Orono to have this kind of equipment that subdues people in the way that it does, I guess is how I want to phrase that, because I have been thinking about what we're funding and if there's a better way to I don't know. As part of our proclamation, as part of our understanding that we don't support police brutality in any way, shape, or form, the taser looks really scary, I guess, to me. So maybe you could help me with that, please.
Sure. You asked a lot there, but if
I know.
if I don't cover something that you asked, please remind me. The taser, look at the taser as another tool that we can use in an attempt to gain compliance. And it is not always in an arrest situation that we will use a taser. If someone's resisting arrest and fighting us, and perhaps they have the potential to have a weapon, or they're, if they're in some sort of a state where they're taking drugs and they're not feeling pain, and that it's requiring a lot of people to subdue this person, the taser in an arrest situation provides another tool to incapacitate someone actually fairly quickly. And while there's potential for pain, it's more of a neuromuscular incapacitation that takes place. It overrides that person's ability to fight. So it's a very quick tool. It's not pain-free, but it is over as soon as the taser is deactivated, and it gives us time to put someone in handcuffs. Now, like I said, it's not just for someone resisting arrest. And I have seen it used equally for someone who is having a mental crisis and is no longer safe for themselves and are actually becoming a danger to themselves and others. I've seen it used as many times in that type of situation as I've seen it for an arrest situation. And again, it could be someone who has a weapon, who would fall into the category of us being placed into some sort of imminent deadly force situation where we could resort to a firearm. And I've seen it used with someone who had a knife that was suffering some severe PTSD, and it was a large military knife, and he was beginning to cut himself. And there was not going to be a way that we were going to be able to go in and ask him to put it down or use our hands to make him stop. Could have been a deadly force situation, and the taser, we were able to use the taser and it intervened, and we were able to help him. So it's just a separate tool. It's like pepper spray. It's a different takedown technique. It's just one of the tools on our belt that help us gain compliance with somebody who is violent, that we don't want to have to either get close to, or that we don't want to have to use deadly force. And there was more to your question, so if you want to remind me.
I was just wondering, like, so how often how often have, Orono police been, have been, now I don't want to say asked to use, but have really had to resort to a taser?
Sure.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't remember the first year that we got them. It was early 2000s. And I would say confidently, it is once to twice a year that those tasers have been used. And it may even be less than one. If I went back all probably 15, 16 years, 17 years, it's no more than once or twice a year. And they're always in situations where we've been able to gain control over someone without having to hurt them further or risk our officers getting hurt.
So Josh, can you just clarify, when you say hasn't been used, do you mean discharged or do you mean brandished? Because every time that comes out of their belt or wherever it is now, because it's not on the belt, there is a use of force report that is generated from that. So we know how many times it has been even pulled out versus how many times it's been used, correct?
Correct. That's a great question. Years ago, we began tracking the number of times we pointed a firearm at someone and consider that a use of force. And then in the last few years, we have even included the pointing of a taser. If you gain compliance from somebody, even by having to point it at them, we record that as a use of force. And I can check, I think it was only, that's also a handful, half a dozen times a year maybe, that the taser is actually brought out, brandished. Someone is told that they're going to be tased if they don't comply, and we gain compliance.
And Josh, can I just clarify one more thing for you, or get you to? When a use of force report hits your desk, do you, my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, is that you actually pull the video from that incident and review it to make sure it was appropriate?
Yes, it goes to the captain. The captain will review the report, all the reports associated with it. Each officer, even if it's one incident that a use of force was used, if there were 3 officers there are 3 officers that do the report. And yes, he will review the body cam and any cruiser camera and evaluate it for, was the training used correctly? Was the policy followed? Is there any retraining that needs to be done? Is there discipline necessary for maybe a misuse of the type of use of force? And then we just review all of those at the end of the year, and we track all of them, and they're categorized for race, age of the officer, years of the officer that the officer been on the job. Was there alcohol involved? Was there a mental health crisis? Was there injury to the officer or the person? Multiple different factors are looked at each report, and then that's accumulated at the end of the year and analyzed.
Okay. Mute, unmute. Is it a piece of equipment that you find vital? Like this is something that your officers should have on them every time they go out?
Absolutely. The option of having that, I don't ever want to come back and say we shot someone in a deadly force situation that may be completely justified.
Right.
There was an option that if we'd had the option of the taser, we could have used it. So there may only be that once I've seen it once in my career so far where the taser absolutely saved someone's life. Many other options where the taser has saved us from having to hurt someone or be hurt.
Okay.
Josh, could you just speak to for a moment about the difference in our requests this year, how we're deviating from practice?
In the past, and with many items, I think we're all seeing this now. In the past, we would just purchase 6 tasers and everything associated with them at whatever cost a taser came in at per taser. Something that taser has moved to, and there's a 5-year useful life that taser will say that the individual tasers are good for, because technology changes, as we all know, and that technology in the actual, it's a very high-tech piece of electronic equipment, so that technology within it deteriorates over those 5 years. So their new option is to essentially purchase them over the 4 or 5 year period, purchase all 6 up front for a lower cost and make that same payment each year. And with that comes the opportunity to train every officer in it as we get it up front with the training cartridges and then the equipment that is necessary to deploy them right at the beginning. So it's just rather than an all upfront cost, where we own them all up front, it's a period of time basically making payments. I don't know if I explained that well enough.
I think you did.
Josh, oh, go ahead, Sophie.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you. It was just something that I started thinking about after this all came down, and we had already gone through that part of the budget before all of this had happened. So, but I trust Josh and I trust his judgment. So
It's an absolutely appropriate question. We train every year with the taser. It's a review as well as an update on what case law has come down across the country. We're very cognizant of how they've been used, when they've been used poorly, when they should be used and when they shouldn't be used. And so every year we're updated, we review the basic operation, and we also go through a practical application of the actual use of this piece of equipment. It's not something we train once on and then think we know forever. We're constantly watching what are the trends and what's the case law stating on how these should be used.
okay, good.
I think, not to open a whole discussion on this at all, and because it's not really the nature of this this meeting, but I think given a lot of the community concerns, both locally and nationally, I think we'll probably have opportunity in the not too distant future to really hear, hopefully maybe Josh talk some about our community practice and policing and the services. I think there's probably some curiosity out there right now, and I think we're about to face some great opportunity to explain that some.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Folks ready for me to continue on with our capital equipment? So we have $185,000 for a new 10-wheeler with, so that's the truck chassis, body and plow. That is replacing a 2005, Rob? No, 12.
2006.
I was off by a year.
Yep.
2006. We came to you because that truck is at the end of its useful life, and we had 2 that were there. We ended up ordering, we had one in the FY20 budget. We ended up ordering both of them, if you'll recall, so that we could get them, hopefully get them here in time to plow. COVID-19 has struck, and while the trucks will be here, one of them is already here. The other, the body and plow parts are delayed because of closures at factories. So we are, like everything else, kind of waiting to see what happens with that. And finally in this budget is a body and sander equipment for the medium duty truck. And this is the truck that we bought used from the university 5 years ago, Rob?
Yeah, it was about 5 or 6 years ago. It's a 2004 International. That's the body is pretty much almost rusted off the frame. But
So the thought is we would buy the body and the sander equipment. When it came time to replace the truck, we would be able to pull that body off and the equipment and put it on the new truck. So it will allow us to kind of get through at a much cheaper cost. Okay, so before I go off this year's capital, do people have questions? Do you want anybody to speak to this? We've got folks here who can do that.
They make sense to me. So the sander equipment for the medium truck body is the insert that goes in the back of the truck.
Yes.
yes, we'll get a hopper sander for that one.
Okay. Oh, I'm all set.
All right, we're gonna continue. I gotta make you small again so I can see what I'm talking about. Can only remember so much. There we go. So we had a pretty lengthy conversation with Rob during the Public Works budget about capital infrastructure, but it's $640,000 this year. All of that, but 195,000, sorry, is funded through general fund taxes. The two TIF districts, the downtown and transit oriented TIF is, we're planning to take $100,000 out of that for Main Street sidewalks, and 95,000 we're planning to take out for the Godfrey paving, drive paving from the EnvisionNet TIF. I don't know if folks wanted to talk more, that's why I left it here, but I don't know what you need.
Sophie, so because we've gone back and forth on North Main, so the idea is to fund 200,000 this.
Yeah, I forgot. I'm sorry, I forgot that. That's why I see that now. Yes, the idea is to do 200,000 this year and 200,000 next year.
Okay. Okay.
I'll fix that when I get done. Okay. Ready to go on to facilities? Yes, I can see Cheryl, I can see Sam, and I can see Cindy. Okay, all right. The Public Works facility is due to have the exterior block sealed. That's about $7,500. We had originally thought we wanted to pay for that on general fund taxes, but given all of the concerns around the budget this year, we're suggesting we take that out of Public Works facility reserve. There's $15,000 to paint the town office exterior. That actually has been a project on the budget for the last 2 years that has gotten pushed. Last year it actually got funded, but then we had a sprinkler problem. We failed a sprinkler inspection in the public safety building, and we needed that $15,000 to repair the sprinkler, so the project got pushed. This is a project I would be very concerned to try to push again. We've already replaced the rotting boards. Now we need to get paint on them to protect them. The $14,000 for the town office carpet replacement, that's the second floor. You all haven't been in council chambers lately, but we have where the carpet has stretched and is pulled up. We've tried stretching it twice, but that's glued. So it's really time for the carpet upstairs to get pulled up and replaced and put down in a way that we can better maintain. And public safety communication cable project. This is over year. So we used to have dispatch in the public safety building. When that left, all of the old wires just kind of, and cables got left there. Every time there was an upgrade, everything just kind of got left there. And it is causing a major problem for IT staff to be able to chase problems with our in-house staff. And we've had to pay people to come in who have better expertise and equipment than we do to actually chase runs. This would allow Bell to bring somebody in and actually fix that so that we will know where the equipment goes. It will be properly labeled. It will be easier to manage. I don't know, Belle, have I left anything out?
You're all good. I think that's correct.
And that would be 100% funded by the IT reserve. Questions about our capital facilities? So what I am going to tell you is this doesn't include any money for the Keith Anderson building. This does nothing to help us address problems at Martin Park. We have a fire station on North Main Avenue that we had a long-term lease agreement with the Boy Scouts that we're in the process of bringing it back because they can't afford to maintain it. And for what they're using it for, it just doesn't make sense for them. But that needs work. We have facilities at the Birch Street School that we've got decks that need to be replaced, porches, rails. So we have a lot of capital facilities work that needs to be done, and we just don't have a lot of money. This is one of the things that we really need to talk about when we think about long-term planning for the town.
So Sophie, for the IT reserve, the $10,000, so we're not actually putting money into any of that. We're just moving it from the reserve to the general.
You are using your you're using your bank account for that, Cindy. So it's your savings account.
You mentioned several of the properties that we have. Is there time where we could discuss the future of all of these?
So my first thought, Sam, had been to try to do that as part of this budget process. It became more clear as the revenues had to get projected down that we just don't have money this year. But we had talked about really looking at the longer term plan for services and capital as we move forward. And there's some research that I think my staff needs to do around deed restrictions. And maybe we might need to talk to some people about, is it possible to get around a deed restriction? You know, what are the options available for us? But I think we might need to start thinking about either how we're going to fund actually taking care of our assets, or alternative things for us to do with those assets. But given everything else that's gone on, my assumption was that council would want to include that with your long-term planning discussions that we had said we would start this fall.
Agreed.
I'm sorry, Sam, I missed that.
No, I just said agreed. I agree.
Oh, okay. All right.
I figured it's on the radar, not too far distance, but we just, right now, it wasn't something to discuss.
Yeah, and I think the other one that I left off is 98 Penobscot Street. The fact that we had brought ideas forward and council was very concerned about, you know, trying to get a higher and best use out of that. We might want to bring that back and talk about, does it make sense to rethink and perhaps limit, but not necessarily reach for the stars in terms of the next use for that. Oh, I saw your lips, but I can't hear you.
Agreed again.
Okay. Hey, I like it when you agree.
If it's something other than agreed, I will be sure to unmute.
That sounds good. Other questions about capital facilities? I don't know if there's anything Dave Pinkham wants to add, or Rob. And I can't see them. They're good? Okay.
They look good.
All right. So we are not putting any money aside this year. So we were scheduled in the first iteration of this budget before COVID-19 hit to put about $250,000 away for future spending. That was money to go into capital equipment and for an ambulance replacement. And we've got radios that we know we have to replace for public safety in the next couple of years. IT audio visual reserves, as that becomes more and more important with how we communicate with our community. Building reserves for the public works facility, for the library, for major maintenance. So when we have a sprinkler test, if we have money there, we're not so worried about whether or not we're going to pass. I mean, it's always nice to pass, but sometimes it doesn't. And the landfill reserve is putting money aside for an incredibly large bill that will be coming due to close the cell of the landfill when it's done. And we've been doing that in $15,000 increments. And we still, when we get to the end, still have a big bill that we have to fund. It usually doesn't all come from reserve. So just make sure that you understand we're taking out of reserves this year, but we're not planning to put anything back in. That's one of the ways we're trying to make this budget work. Questions about capital reserve funding? Ready to move on, Cindy?
Yeah, I think we all understand what that is.
So I didn't want to get into the weeds necessarily with the 5-year plan, but I wanted to illustrate for people that when you consider that we were pretty low this year, and you look next year and the total expense is $2.8 million, the needs don't go away. And 2 million of that is scheduled to come from general fund taxes. And a 1.5, almost 1.6 million of that is infrastructure that when we push, we're creating, part of that push, we have a project all ready to go on Chapel and College Heights that is just sitting on the shelf this year because we couldn't afford it. We have reserves that need to be funded. There are some big equipment purchases that are on the horizon. So I just my purpose here is to just illustrate for you that the need continues. And when we push, it kind of creates a bit of a wave. It doesn't just move things ahead because we've already tried to just move things ahead. Am I making any sense? You have your capital plans in front of you. Were there any questions that people had about those? I'm assuming you don't want me to go through every project for the next 5 years. Or do you?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So,
Sophie,
yeah.
before we move on, I think at some point, I guess probably when we start talking about planning for the future, I'd really want to take a look at this long-term capital plan and have some discussion about where we think we're going to find the additional revenue to fund all these needs.
Absolutely. I think that this, just like our conversation with WPCF about its capital infrastructure and some of its capital equipment, I think it's needed.
And Sophie, to sort of thank you, Tom. But yes, me too. To add on to that, I would really like to see. I don't know whether it's part of the presentation or something at the budget wrap-up process. I would like to see sort of a slide or a list of all of the emergency stopgap measures we've taken this budget season, like all the different ways that you're being crafty to make the numbers work, to get through this crisis, robbing Peter to pay Paul, so that we can have something to show the public and for our own benefit as well, to help in that long-term planning. Like, these are the things that, like, for example, I mean, just what you were showing us about the reserve. Okay, we're supposed to be putting money into reserve and we're not this year, but we're taking out of it. And we need to not do that next year or the year after. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it would be really helpful to see all of those things kind of in one place. Like, these are all the things that, you know, if we're feeling relaxed right now, like, oh, we made it through budget season, there are all these things coming up next year and in the next 2 or 3 years that are going to be a crisis if we can't figure out a solution.
And we still don't know about state revenue sharing or anything like that coming down the road too. So.
No, I reached out to Kate Dufour at Maine Municipal Association about the forecasting for revenue sharing. You know, I think all of the different towns are using their own methodology to try to dial in where they think revenue sharing might come in next year. And what we're all really doing is just waiting for the state revenue forecasting committee to meet. They're scheduled to come back in July. Kate is hoping that they will have some answers by the end of July. My thought is that we would, so we can, if we adopt a budget, it gives us something to work within. We can only commit taxes once. It looks like we're going to probably end up committing taxes towards the end of August. That's when we normally do, around the 20th of August. My thought is if council is prepared to not take August off likely and just either confirm its budget or revise its budget at that point at our August meeting, just because we might find that I have been unduly harsh, or we might find that I'm way too optimistic. I don't know.
So Sophie, if hoping that you're unduly harsh and that revenues come in a lot better,
Yep.
does it make sense to kind of have a discussion at some point about the priorities of which we would bring things back in? Or like, could we fund reserves? We could fund reserves next May, couldn't we?
So I think what you'll find is that you can make decisions anytime to spend more money. You can't make decisions to collect more money from taxpayers. So what we would want to do is really look at, if I was unduly optimistic and it's really, they're forecasting another $200,000, then I think we would want to come in as close to, you know, before we commit taxes as we can, to have some discussions at that point about what we do. But to answer your question, what Megan is asking for makes perfect sense. That way council can see in one place what we've already taken out of the budget. It would be just as easy for council to then make kind of a laundry list of priorities of how things might come back in to the budget. And that will help in the next year as well, when we're putting the budget together. So the thing I want to make sure that council understands that by kicking the can, where the problem doesn't go away, you know, and I think when we tried to make up for revenue sharing losses with minimal tax increases on the municipal side, we did a lot of that kind of, we go back to Rob and we'd say, take this project out and push the plan. And understand that every year when you look at the plan, we're always in 6 digits in the year we're in and 7 digits in the following year. So this is kind of, it's our pattern. And the issue that we're running into that's different is that I think Rob is getting to a place where he can't just say, oh yeah, that's not that big a deal if we just move it forward. That we're getting into some structural issues. And I think that's what we need to talk about in the fall. Helpful? Do you want to continue to run through the rest of the years? Is that worth it? No? I see one no.
I don't think so.
Okay, because what you'll see is the same thing pretty much. But that would take me, I had it all done, to questions, discussion, or revisions.
Sophie, this is actually one of those things that's always been in my mind, and I'm glad that Meg kind of brought it out in the sense of like looking at it going forward. Is my concern, since in my short tenure here, is about infrastructure, and it seems just in this short period of time that when we look at like kicking the can, it's always in the infrastructure, which I personally speak to a lot of citizens that that's the most important thing to them, including myself. I don't want to be living in a dilapidated community because we keep kicking it and there's nothing there. So as we go through this process, I really would love to just, as a council, sit and really put some concrete stuff in, that we're not going to sit there at some point saying like, well, we got to do something and let's kick this again. Because yet again, I really am concerned about this over the years, kicking something down the road, and look where we're at now, because something like this pandemic can happen and just flip it on its side. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
I've heard similar comments as well. You know, I think we all have clearly everything from sidewalks to, you know, all these projects, so that keep moving down. So I agree with Terry.
It's tough because there's such large expenditures that I understand why they become the target of the kick the can game every year that we're forced to play. But I was thinking, I was walking my dogs over in North Main the other day, and I was walking on the great new sidewalk by Webster Park and thinking about all the years I lived in that neighborhood where I did not walk after dark because it was like I'd trip in a hole and fall down. I mean, like, it was dangerous. That sidewalk was dangerous for a long time. And I think about all of the ways that, you know, when we are able to do the work, it vastly, not just the appearance of our community, which is important, but it vastly improves the citizens' ability to use the spaces in our community. And then also, I mean, gosh, these things they're gonna fall apart and not be usable, and then end up costing more money. Yeah, so it's a struggle because they're such big ticket items, but I really want to make a commitment to try to work on a plan to put some of these things back in.
A lot of it was like ADA as well. Accessibility issues are huge, and there are our constituents that are being greatly impacted by that.
Yeah. So I agree with those comments on infrastructure. And I think what we're facing is similar to what most communities are facing and the state itself is facing. We all talk about the great value we have in our people, and our people represent 70% of our budget. And if we want to spend a lot more money on infrastructure, we either are going to have to find a lot more revenue or have fewer people.
That was my thought too. I was happy that we could save jobs, and, you know, and that's important, and we'll get to the infrastructure. We will, you know, and I like the idea of prioritizing, you know,
Yeah,
like
I
it's
agree.
almost like, how do we get the economy back? You know, it's like we're kind of been doing this, we're doing this step by step in our own lives right now too. So I'm happy that we had that was one of our motives, was to not, I don't say motives, but our guiding principles was to make sure people had jobs and that people were safe. And I think we'll get to the infrastructure as we need to.
So that's what I have for capital. That's pretty good. 45 minutes is.
Awesome.
And I would just say to the team, my team, they did a great job this year, really looking at prioritizing and what could get pushed and what couldn't, and came to the table with some real creative solutions. So hats off to the team.
Yep, I think the team is very creative. And maybe we go back to the as to priorities of bringing things back without causing interdepartmental feuds.
We got that handled. Not a problem.
Okay.
We don't feud interdepartmentally here.
Good. Okay. So I guess we're done with the big municipal budget discussion for the week?
I think we are. I think you and I had talked about taking some time maybe on Thursday, because we had held Thursday as a meeting date, to just do a final review and have me understand kind of the priorities that council's looking for in the budget presentation. I don't know if you're still interested in that or if you want to move to that discussion tonight, up for whatever you would like, but you normally give me final guidance and some priorities and ways that you'd like to see the budget presented.
Personally, for me, Sophie, I think you've done an incredible job with the presentations and the PowerPoints. Those have been very, very helpful. I'm wondering, do you have any idea where we are with the this point?
With the what? I'm sorry,
With
you
the
cut
tax
out.
rate and the mill rate?
Yeah. So let me just pull it up so I have today's number. There we go. Give me just one sec. So with all of the changes that council has supported, we're down on the municipal expense side, 206,903 or 1.93%. Our revenues are down $140,040 or 2.28%, which includes that increase of 136,000 in homestead. Just so you know, that's why it doesn't feel quite so bad. Net assessment is down 66,863 or 1.46%. We are, the county remains up 22,990 or 3.37%. School is up 559,129 or 8.19%, which drives our net assessment for commitment up $515,256 or 4.26%. That, coupled with projected value losses of 9.36 million, leaves us with a mill rate right now of 28.15, up $1.70. 6 cents of that belongs to the municipality, 8 cents belongs to the county, and $1.56 belongs to the school. Just because you all ask, I've been keeping a running tally. We are, in order to bring the municipal tax rate down to 0 increase, we would need to either increase revenue by $27,100 or decrease expenses by $27,100. Is that what you were looking for?
That was.
Awesome.
Or some
But-
combination of that.
Yeah, yep.
I am thinking that given that we have to kind of wait to see where the revenues come in, and we may be talking about it in August again. I'm not sure whether we need to really try and find that $20,000 or $27,000.
I think it all depends on the way you want to present your budget.
I guess I would ask council for their input on that.
Cindy, I'd agree with that statement. I would be more enthused about finding $27,000 in revenue than $27,000 more cuts. So I think I'd prefer to wait and see.
I agree also. I just think that we've cut. It's been painful, but I'm in the same camp also. It's wait. I'm telling people to get out there before the end of the month to register and do whatever they can in this community so we don't have to do that. So that's just kind of another list. I'll throw it out there again. We have our officers are able to help out and make sure you get your stuff registered, get it in, so we don't have to worry about doing this additional bit. So I'm with you guys.
So this is assuming that that revenue sharing does not go up above what it was last year?
No.
No, this is a $256,000 cut to what revenue sharing was last year. It's about an $800,000 swing in total where we were supposed to be versus what we're projecting for this year.
So the state gave us 3% revenue sharing last year and said that they would give us 3.75 this year. You're saying that you're
So
assuming.
revenue sharing is based on the receipts of taxes, income tax, corporate tax, sales tax, some fees on financial institutions. It's all based on the economy. So when they are projecting a cliff of receipts, it caused us to recalculate, reforecast our revenue sharing. So we had predicted that we were, when I originally put the budget together before it got distributed to you, we had predicted that we were going to go from 1.5 million to a little over $2 million in revenue sharing. Using some back of the envelope, trying to project based on what I'm seeing, that number got recalculated to about $1.248 million. So that's the swing, and that's what we've been talking about.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, no, I was going to say, I think this has been a great experience in how to make things work with not a whole lot to start with. And I'm in agreement with Cindy and Tom that we've done a good job trying to keep our expenses cut and our people saved. And I don't see how we can go back and try to find $27,000 at this point.
Sophie, one figure that you didn't mention a few minutes ago, the projected municipal mill rate as it currently stands would be what? Out of that 28.
So it would go from 10.04 to 10.10.
Wow. That's amazing.
Uh,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know how council feels about that and whether that's a doable change.
Sorry, Cindy, you froze for, what did you say?
Sorry, I muted myself. I said at one point, Sophie and I had discussed whether we could adjust revenues up 27,000 to kind of take care of that 6 cents. So I don't know how council feels about that, where we are all project, these are all based on Sophie's projections. So
Yeah,
I think we'll be a little bit less conservative.
Yeah, I have no crystal ball.
Yeah, I'd be hesitant to adjust revenues unless our manager was reasonably optimistic that adjustment was reality.
So today I had a conversation with our auditors because, as you're aware, we're doing the first ever remote field audit. That blows my mind because a field audit is in the field, but we're doing it remotely. He seems to feel, based on what he's seeing in other communities, he's really feeling like there will be CARES Act funding. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what we will have to do to be able to get it, but he is preparing me for a single item audit next year, which would denote considerable funding. So I don't know. I'm nervous because he's an auditor, he's not a forecaster, but he sees a lot more than I do. So I will tell you that the difference to get the $27,000 is like 0.1% increase for the year in where I think we would come in. So
Mm.
I'm nervous simply because I don't ever want to go in the hole on my watch. You know that. You know that my job is to be a good steward of our assets and our funding. On the other hand, at this point, I have projected an $800,000 loss from what had been originally forecast. If we're talking about $27,000, when I'm thinking about being able to say to people when they pay their tax bill and they're so mad about the increase, that had nothing to do with the town side, that to me makes my life a lot easier, and I'm not out there as much as you guys are. But ultimately it's your choice, but it's $27,000.
Mm.
And if you're not looking for cuts, I don't know where I could come up with $27,000 of cuts and not make major impact. But on the revenue side, I think I've been not unduly optimistic. But I don't think I've been unduly conservative either. I don't know. Right.
See, you're leading me to the point of thinking that we ought to do the 27,000 now. I want to think about it.
All right.
One other thing that we really didn't talk about too much that I recall is the use of fund balance at 400,000. I just would like to make sure that we discuss that and make sure that everybody's comfortable with that. It's $50,000 more than it was last year. And we always worry about fund balance. So I didn't know if any counselors had any position on that.
I'm okay with it. It goes back to where we were a couple of years ago.
Yep.
We had reduced the use of fund balance in last year's budget, which was a really positive thing. But I think in this environment, I'm okay with it. We also are now hearing, Sophie, if I'm not mistaken, that the end of the year balance is looking a little more positive for this year than it was at one time earlier in the spring.
Yeah.
And
I think, Tom, I've asked my staff to do another round of forecasting based on end of the month receipts. I'll have more information that I can share with you later in the week, but the last time I looked at it, I thought that we might actually have, on a budgetary basis, so the money still comes out of fund balance that we had assigned, that we had said would, but on a budgetary receipts, revenues versus expenditures, I think our reduction in expenditures will more than cover our lack of receipts by about $100,000, which sounds like a lot of money until you consider we're on a $13 million budget.
right. Well, that's good news.
I agree with Tom. I mean, just like with a household budget, you do things when you can afford to do them. And last year we made a commitment to reduce our use of fund balance and to give property owners some tax relief with the anticipated increase in revenue sharing. We're not in a position to do that this year. And I don't feel uncomfortable. I mean, I feel uncomfortable with taking a step backwards with our use of fund balance, but I think that it's a reasonable thing to do in this situation.
I agree, and I think it could have been a lot worse, actually, all things considered, given where we are right now. Not to make light at all of where we are, and that we do take this matter seriously, but I think it could have been quite a bit worse. And I remain optimistic and fingers crossed for better news coming soon. So, but until then, we have to plan in a prudent way. So here we are.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure everybody understands that one of the reasons that we haven't felt it as much right now with the drop of revenue sharing is that the state comptroller is providing the receipts for revenue sharing based on their budgeted projections for the income taxes that were due in April that now aren't due until July. So we're getting money now that the state has not received. There will at some point potentially be a reckoning
Right.
of that. It's got to get reconciled at some point. So just to be on that's what's helping us not get hit quite so hard with the payroll taxes and other taxes that come in on a quarterly basis.
Could we have to give any back?
No, I don't think so, Cindy. I think once we get it, it's ours. Where we might end up with is if they're doing it on an actuarial basis, at some point in time, your actuarial piece has to get reconciled to your actual cash. And so that would happen to us if I booked a revenue at year end that I was thinking we were going to get and we end up not getting it. I have to then find that money in the coming year. So that would come out of some other pot of money to reconcile. Is that making the simplistic, but.
Any other comments on fund balance?
So,
Are we,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm still thinking about the $27,000. Are we going to have an opportunity to discuss that item again, whether we go to 10.10 for municipal taxes or or stay at 10.04?
So Tom, the answer is yes, you get to discuss whatever you'd like because you're the bosses.
Oh,
but
that's right.
the plan is that I've got to have some number, and it can be 10.06, it can be 10.1, to take to the public hearing. We have the public hearing on the 15th at 7 o'clock, and then we wait 2 weeks usually to give the public an opportunity to talk to you and for you to reconvene if you so choose. And then we present numbers. If we don't reconvene, the numbers that get presented for adoption on the 29th will be the numbers that are presented at public hearing. If we do reconvene, you can make whatever changes you would like to that. My sense is that if you were making huge changes in the budget, Tom, that were not the result of comments that you heard from the public at the public hearing, you would probably want to send it back out for another public hearing. But that's my sense of the transparency that council wants. I'm not sure that that's a legal requirement.
Yep.
The other piece to let you know, Rob Yerxa is hiding behind his black screen there, but he texted to say the other option that you have if you don't want to mess with revenues or expenses in for something that's going to happen this year is that the split on North Main Avenue was an arbitrary split. So we could do 170,000 this year and 230,000 next year, and it will not impact the timing of that project. But that's 30,000 more that you would need to raise next year.
Yep.
So if he took the time to text me, I wanted to make sure you heard it.
I'm glad he did that. So are we going to meet again before the 15th?
That's the question. We could meet on Thursday if you want everybody to kind of sit with this. We could have a meeting, and depending on how people feel, it could be relatively short or it could be longer to have a discussion on certain matters. But maybe we should take all of this, sit on it a little bit, and then have a meeting on Thursday.
I think so.
Okay.
I agree.
I'm good with that too, Cindy.
We'll meet at 4.
Great.
And at that meeting, would you like me to do the list of what we've taken out and
That'd be
kind
great.
of some ideas of priorities to give you something to talk about?
That would be great.
Okay.
All right. Before we go to the brief town manager report, we have circulated different statements regarding the tragic situation of George Floyd. I think the latest rendition has been sent out this afternoon. I think that it's important that we get something out so that we're not a priority for us. So I'm wondering if there's any other discussion about the latest statement and whether it needs to be further changed, or if people are ready to put it out.
Cindy, I think that I only shared that directly with you.
Okay.
But just so folks know, I'm sorry, I was in a rush in between work meetings and I just sent it to you because you'd asked for it. But it's basically the same statement that I had included in that document. I made a couple of very minor word changes, but it's basically that. I think Cindy asked to see it just in its own document so that there wasn't a lot of stuff in there. But yes, I'm sorry, I just sent it directly to you.
Okay, so if I knew how to.
Could we get a copy of that and talk about this on Thursday?
If you guys want to wait that long, it's up to you.
It's the
It will
same.
only take a couple minutes.
It's the same draft, Cheryl, that was on the document as of last Friday.
Yeah,
The
I
last-
only
the
asked
very
because
last
we
one.
had like four.
Yeah, no,
things.
I read it, and there's not much difference then, Meg?
No,
Not
it's
much difference?
yeah.
Okay.
Lori pointed out the repeated use of a word in a paragraph.
Okay. Yeah, I read that. I'm good with that. That sounds like a good statement. I'm happy with that.
I really want to think, this has really been a collective effort to get this right. And I think the final version that we're talking about here, I think Maggie did a great job getting that, really succinct and powerful and making our point very clearly. So thanks to everybody who was involved with this. This is important, and I'm hoping we can make a decision tonight, because even though it only take a couple minutes to talk about it Thursday, that's 3 more days. And that's not a couple minutes.
I was very happy with the with Meg's work, and would think that we should move that forward.
Anybody else? Anybody see a reason why we shouldn't move it forward? All right.
So
Well,
can I just clarify, Cindy, what moving it forward means? Because that usually means it's my job to do something. I just want to make sure I'm doing the right thing.
I was just about to say that I think the idea is that we would put it on social media and maybe on the
Website?
person here. So I would say our normal channels for social media. Anybody else can chime in.
Should I also do it as a press release?
I
Just
think it wouldn't
for,
hurt.
I did just share that with everybody individually as well.
Thank you.
I just received that. Thank you, Meg.
So Sophie, if you and you want to have a discussion, we can have a discussion about how to get it out.
how about I give you my plan, and let me come back here. I'm gonna format it on letterhead and give you my kind of what I'd send out, and make sure that we've got all the same stuff, Cindy, and once it's good, we'll drop it and let it go probably tomorrow morning, if that's all right with folks. Is that okay? People that put all the work in? Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Is there any, so that's moving forward. Is there any updates from the town manager?
So I have a couple. The first, like I said, the auditor is here. Cindy and Tom, I sent you an email asking how you wanted to remotely meet with the auditor. they've got an open Zoom meeting that if I know what time you're going to be there, I close it on my end and my staff's end and just send you the link so you could do that. They indicated if you have a time that you'd like to do it, they will make sure they're available at that time. The other option is for you to get on the link whenever you want and just click the link and you appear and holler at Casey nicely, please. And he'll talk with you. The only thing there is I may or may not be here to shut my stuff down if you're there. And the thing I like about that process is it just reiterates for everybody that the auditor works for you. And I'm not usually part of that conversation since I'm your treasurer. So you let me know what you want and I will make it happen.
Cindy, if there's a time that works for you, I can be pretty flexible. You're the person that has all kinds of commitments.
If I could let you guys know first thing in the morning,
Absolutely.
I will
Great.
definitely do that. And if other counselors have a concern about some financial issue, if you want to let Tom or I know, we'll definitely ask that question when we talk to the auditors.
Okay. So my other, it's a little bit of a conversation. I don't want to take a ton of your time, but we seem, that COVID-19 has not been an easy thing. And when we started and we locked everything down, everybody really understood what was happening. And now that there's been some mixed messaging around opening things back up, we're starting to get some pressure to to formalize people being able to use space, to give our consent to letting people back in buildings. And primarily, it's around Gould's Landing and the rec fields, Keith Anderson House, the senior center, and town office. And I just wanted to take just a couple of minutes to let council know where we are with this. We're trying to use CDC guidance and the guidance that other professional organizations have laid out. So the Parks and Rec folks and the state of Maine. And everything is supposed to be around safety. And while people are ready for this to be over and ready to get back out into the world, the fact is that there are still some pretty significant limitations. And the good news is that CDC has changed its guidance on portable toilets, and we can now sign it, and letting people know that they need to bring their own hand sanitizer and they need to understand that we're not cleaning it. And so now we're in a process of having stickers created for Gould's Landing so people can park out there, and limiting some of the use, but definitely will be taking portable toilets back out. We know that that FEMA will give us some funding for some special details from the police department to make sure that we understand and are enforcing crowd size. So out at Netto Savoy, it's not just 50 people. It's, 113 square feet is what makes up a 6 foot in a radius circle, which is what we need out there between household groups. So Mitch is working at it, and actually Mitch and Josh are working together. And we should have a plan that we hope people will see in the next 2 weeks, but now it's a matter of getting vendors in place and signage up and, things like that. Rec fields. These are public spaces. Unless there is a clear public health issue, we are not running around trying to enforce people using or not using our public spaces, our outdoor spaces. However, when it comes to us consenting, we are going to go through that same checklist. And right now, Mitch and Jeff Lowe are working on what that checklist will look like in the next week or so. But we've had requests for some sports leagues to start using the field. And we're reaching out. I had a good conversation with the school today. We want to be on the same page so that it's a little bit seamless when their fields start being open in the fall after construction, so that we're kind of all on the same page. We think that that's really important. Keith Anderson House remains closed. Where we're coming from right now is that at the senior center, we are facilitating some essential services. We would argue that our food program, which we know will go at least until the end of the month with the school and the Housing Foundation, is an essential service. We can argue that the thrift shop is likely an essential service, that we have people who we're in a change of season, and we have folks out there that this is how they would be able to clothe themselves. And so we need to talk with folks about how we can do that safely. But things like our dance program, we had a fitness program. What we have offered them is to try to help facilitate something outside. But inside just really is, our spaces are too small and not enough air handling in the Keith Anderson House to be able to do that safely right now. So I guess in bringing you up to speed, I know that the community is going to start getting very frustrated because we're not moving with the speed of light. I think whatever we do needs to be gradual so that we can do a little bit of a dance to see if we open up a little, does that work? And if that works, can we build on that success, as opposed to opening everything up and having people believe that there are things available to them and then having to shut everything down because we end up with problems. So we are, we're working through that. The university has announced that it is not going to be able to put on the summer day camp. And I had conversations with Kenda Sheely, who is one of our primary contacts at Student Life, which is where the rec center reports up through. We are hoping that we might be able to still collaborate to put programming together off-site, off-campus, to meet some of our needs. We have a bunch of kids that need something to do that's productive and in some cases supervised. We actually welcomed Megan Mazzilla, is our new Parks and Rec coordinator. She started today and she is hitting the ground running, and her primary, literally, her primary job right now is to be working with our contacts on campus, to be getting great ideas from the rec world and with Mitch, to look at programming this summer for 2 specific age groups. We're looking at the K-5 group, and also we're very concerned about the 5th grade to 8th grade group. So that 5th grade group overlaps in both places. I think there are some kids that need a more supervised environment and some kids in that 5th grade group that would do better in a less structured environment. But those 2 age groups want very different things, and we need to kind of plan. We are hoping over the next couple of weeks to get some proposals together. Kenda has indicated that she will check with University of Maine System to see how we might be able to collaborate with the university to provide some of this programming and some capacity offsite. So the good news is we had some people who were interested in being around kiddos in the lifeguard world who we had identified might be available for some summer work. Now I'm trying to identify how we might pay for some alternative programming, and whether or not we have some of those same people that we've already identified might still be available to help us. And we have some perennial rad camp counselors that also might still be here and available to help provide some programming here. this is going to be tricky for us because the school is embarking on their construction project. And so we don't have as much freedom as we would normally have in the summertime to be able to go use a lot of space. What we have is really the town property up on, up here. And so we need to kind of do some more thinking around that. And I want people to understand that we are working hard to try to roll out some new and different programming. My goal is to find alternative funding so that we are not faced with having to charge people lots of money to be able to participate. That this should be, we probably are going to need registrations in the in the younger grades, just to make sure we've got adequate resources there for supervision and also for equipment. But we are not, I think it would be a mistake to try to charge significant funds for this programming. We have too many people that are just not earning what they would normally be earning. So that's my update. I don't know if people have any other questions or issues that they want to talk about, but I think that I can sense a frustration coming in from the inquiries that we've received, that they feel like we're not moving fast enough. And I will say, I think it's important that I move at a speed that allows us to be pretty sure that what we're doing is safe, and quite honestly, that we have the money or the ability to get the money to fund it without going in the hole.
Sophie, is Martin Park one of the properties that the kids
Yes.
can use? Okay.
Yep.
Sophie, this is a tough one to navigate, and I so appreciate that you have thick skin, because on one level, I understand frustrations, but if something goes wrong, they're going to come right back to the door. So I ask the public, everybody, no matter what our lifestyles, it's all been frustrating, but there's a reasoning behind it. And the town has the best interest of our citizens to make sure that they're taken care of. And in the end, it'll be all good. It'll be fine. But I don't beat up on our staff. They're doing what they're directed and what they feel is best for our people. So I feel like the town's really got the best interest of our citizens. So thank you.
I do also appreciate the work to create alternatives to that. I know a lot of people depend on that, the humane camp for, not that it's just a way to send the kids off, but that takes care of the kids. And so this is, if anything, during this COVID thing, I think we've all been even reminded even further the importance of childcare and things to do and the roles that we play for that sort of thing. Not that that's our job, but it's like this is absolutely impacting families. And so I really appreciate that we're coming up with solutions. And also welcome, Megan. You have no idea what you're getting into.
Mhm. And also too, backing on what Terry said, we were talking about this, I think probably before you came, Sophie, about Orono's high school graduation as well. So that went off. There was a couple glitches, technical glitches, but it was so nice for my son to have some closure and to have a motorcade through Orono. And he didn't want to do it because it's, but after he did it, he appreciated that the town and the school went through that, went through those steps to make sure that they were taken care of. So I was happy too that had happened.
Congratulations.
But in my walks around town, I've seen some people, and I encourage people to register to vote absentee to get absentee ballots to protect our poll workers. And I had a few people comment that they had trouble finding the absentee ballot request on the town website, and I have been encouraging people to just go to maine.gov. So I hadn't gone through the town website when I did it myself. But is there any way we could put a button right when you open up the town webpage temporarily so that people can find that way to access a absentee ballot?
So right now, right? Yes. Yep.
So I'm sorry, I didn't go check after someone said that one on my walk. But I should have checked before I said it. But they said that they had to scroll down to look for it, and I assumed that people can also just call the town office and request one by phone.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's what I said as well. You can just pick up the phone on a weekday and they'll be there and they can.
And it may be something that where you're not getting the absentee ballots till what, the 14th of June?
Yeah, it's just a request now.
Yeah.
Well, it was that they couldn't figure out. They had said they had to scroll through to find out where the request was. So if we could put a button temporarily.
Great suggestion. I think it's important, especially, for the upcoming election, of course, but also with November, there's a lot of concern about, voter safety there too. So I think that's a great suggestion, whatever we can do.
So I just want to make sure people understand that when we brought people back and opened up by appointment, we brought people back on the same schedule that they're going to be on July 1, so that we didn't confuse the public. So that is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 7:30 to 4:30, Thursday, 7:30 to 5:30, and not open to the public on Fridays. So people are here doing back office stuff on Friday, but we're not answering the phone because we're not open to the public.
Works for me. And I think that the way you're opening the town is about the best you can do. It's I know from my work, I'm sure other people's work, that we're going very slowly, and I've talked to friends in Boston who are going even slower. So,
Well, when you consider that today marked the first day that we were able to bring our code enforcement officer back, our planner is back working half-time because I have to borrow his office for the other half-time, and as soon as the field audit is done, he should be back full-time, as will our administrative assistant in code. But yeah, we're just bringing people fully back, and it's been great. Technology has allowed us to have people work from home, and for folks not to really see a huge difference, especially in community development. But the transition is not easy because their whole office got moved to their house. They've had their chairs and all of their computer equipment sitting in their living rooms. So just bear with us. We're trying awful hard.
Thank you, Sophie.
thank you. Know what you need to give us for Thursday? You're comfortable
Yeah,
with?
I thought too, I'm kind of playing with a different outline for the budget meeting, and getting some feedback about more visual ways that I can present the information as opposed to lots of words. And so I might, if I get there, based on the audit, the way the audit's going, I might have kind of an outline that will at least get a little bit of feedback from you about that presentation. It's
Great.
mine, but it's really yours. I'm doing it, but it really is yours.
That sounds great. All right. Well, with that, I guess we're adjourned. We did good today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cindy.
See you all
Thank you, Cindy.
Thursday.